In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
With the conquest of Britain by the Romans, the Collegia, about which no Roman society was complete, made their advent into the island, and traces of their work remain even to this day. Under the direction of the Mother College at Rome, the Britons are said to have attained a high degree of excellence as builders, so that when the cities of Gaul and the fortresses along the Rhines were destroyed, Clorius, AD 298, sent to the Britons for architects to repair or rebuild them, and whether the Collegia existed in Britain after the Romans left, as some affirm, or were suppressed, as we know that they were on the continent, when the barbarians overran it, is not clear. Perhaps they were destroyed, or nearly so, for with the revival of Christianity in 598, we find Bishop Wilfrid York joining with the Abbot of Wearmouth and sending to France and Italy to induce masons to return to build the stone, as he puts it, after the Roman manner. This confirms the Italian chroniclists who relate that Pope Gregory sent several of the fraternity of the Liber Mortuae with St. Augustine, as later they followed St. Boniface into Germany.
The Abracast, occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Recording this episode as I stumble out of the studio into the sunlight, blinking nervously at the blue sky. This is sort of like the first aquatic animal to step foot out of the water and onto the land and wonder what the fuck is going on. Our tyrant Governor Egghead loses his iron grip on the People's Republic of Pennsylvania. I am John, and this is the Abracast. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope everybody is safe and sound. There's a couple things that I need to talk about. First is Magician Sticker May. Anyone who joins Patreon or Subscribe Star at a $5 or $10 tier gets a free exclusive Magician sticker. This Magician sticker is the design of the first card of the tarot, card number 1. The tarot card deck that I designed. My proofs are done. They're on their way to me. I think I'm going to get them tomorrow. I'm very excited about it. I can't wait to see them. Anyhow, it's a striking design. I'm getting nothing but thumbs ups and pats on the back for them. So I can't wait to get the deck, and the stickers are really cool. You can't buy them anywhere. They're just for $5 and $10 Patreon supporters. So actually, we got a lot of Patreon stuff and Subscribe Star stuff going on right now. Last month, I did an Easter sermon in quarantine, sort of talking about Easter in quarantine. And it did really well. I got a lot of great feedback from it, so I thought I could do a Pentecost sermon. This is sermon about the Pentecost in quarantine, specifically as quarantine is ending for so much of the country. The episode is called the Pentecost Sermon in Quarantine, the Psychological Crisis of Solve and Coagula. I believe it's very good. So it's available now. What you got to do is you got to go to Patreon. It's free. You don't have to be a supporter on Patreon or Subscribestar to listen to it, but that's where it's posted. And while you're there, you might want to support the show a little bit. Another thing that's going on with my $10 Patreon people is I found this need that I had where I needed some kind of like holy water. I needed some water of the art for something that I'm not going to get into. So I cracked open some old books and I'm figuring out. So I'm ordained, right? I paid $25 to the Universal Church of Everlasting Life or whatever that is. So I can literally just wave my hand above some water and make some fucking holy water if you believe in that kind of thing or whatever. But I wanted some actual, honest to goodness, water of the art. So using the Magus, the Celestial Intelligencer, using an operation from the Greater Key of Solomon, I'm actually going to make a batch of this water of the art. I'm going to make a batch of it, and everyone on the Vessel of the Art, which is the $10 tier, is going to get a free batch of this dope-ass wizard water. Also, if you're a Patreon or Subscribestar person, you're getting access to behind the scenes videos. So it's me, you can only gather these ingredients on certain days and certain hours, and according to the ritual that I'm following. So the first thing that I did is I waded into the Ohio River to get the water that's going to be the water of the art. And then the other day I was picking out some of the various herbs and stuff. I had to do it an hour of Mercury within the day of Mercury, and there's a video on that too. So that's there. Some people, I feel, I'm getting word that are really excited about the water. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about making it. I'm gonna film a video, the whole thing. And put it up, the whole ritual. So the ritual is going to take place at 11 p.m. on June 3rd. And then on June 6th, there's a full moon. Again, I have to do it. I couldn't do it on the day of the full moon because it has to be on the day of Mercury and the hour of, in an hour of Mercury. And the best I could get to, the way that the month worked out, was doing it on the 3rd. So the operation's going down on the 3rd, and then I'm going to put the water in these bottles, and I'm going to charge them under the full moon, and then I'm going to figure out the logistics of sending them out to everybody. So if you're interested in getting some dope ass wizard water, I mean, the stuff you could do with it is amazing. You can use it for exorcisms. You have to use it to bless the items that you use in magical rituals. So you can visit abercast.com. There's a Water of the Art page there now. Click on the link, click on the little button or whatever, and it'll take you to there, and it'll explain some of the details of it. So, speaking of Patreon, we got some new supporters. I want to do a shout out to Edward. Thank you very much, Edward. Lisa upgraded. I think that she's interested in the water. And we got Nikki. Nikki, thank you guys all very much. I really do appreciate it. And also, I want to throw a shout out to another listener because he sent me it had to be like $20 or $25 worth of books on Kindle the other day that he thought that I might like. I haven't got into them yet, but thank you so much, Sam, for those books. I do appreciate it. If you listen to the show, you have to understand that I love reading. And the books that he sent me look really cool. One of them in specific is I believe it's a novel recounting the Noah leading up and maybe during and maybe a little bit after the flood. Like I said, I haven't cracked it open yet, but I thought it was great. And it sounds like it's right up my alley, and I really do appreciate it. So for all of you guys who are generous enough to have a vessel of the art, go ahead and raise it to the sky. And those of you out there that are just drinking out of a cup or a glass or whatever that's not a vessel of the art, raise your shit up to the sky too. And thank you guys for listening to the show, and thank you guys for checking out the Pentecost sermon in quarantine, and thank my supporters out there for this. Without you guys, none of this would be possible, and I love all of you. I really do. And besides my love, I appreciate all of you. I just got a new headset because if you go back and listen, you could probably tell that I was struggling with my headset for the last couple episodes. So I got a brand new headset, and they work great. I fucking love it. And I was able to do that because of the support of the show. So thank you guys. So I think we're going to be wrapping up this current series that we're doing on Freemasonry this evening. The featured book is The Builders by Joseph Fort Newton, 1914. And we did one history episode last month. I think we're going to be able to finish it out tonight. We're going to do the history part 2. And we just talked a little bit about, in the cold open, about when what happened to the Masonic guild when Rome fell. It kind of went into hiding, apparently, because of these fucking barbarians. So we're just going to jump right into this here. Let's see, where were we? Okay, again, in 604, Augustine sent the monk Pietro back to Rome with a letter to the same pontiff, begging him to send more architects and workmen, which he did, as the Liber Moratari, I have a real hard problem with that word, were none other than the Comancine masters, and it seems certain that they were at work in England long before the period which the old charges began in the story of their English masonry. Among those sent by Gregory was Paulinus, and it is a curious fact that he is spoken of under the title of the Magister, which is great, which is meant, no doubt, that he was a member of the Comancine order, for they were so described their members. And we know that many monks were enrolled in their lodges, having studied the art of building under their instruction. St. Hugh of Lincoln was not the only bishop who could plan a church, instruct the workmen, or handle a hod. Only it must be kept in mind that the ecclesiastics who became skilled in architecture were taught by the Masons, and that it was not the monks, as some seem to imagine, who taught the Masons their art, speaking of this early and troublous time. Giuseppe Mezzarina says the only one lamp remained alight, making a bright spark in the darkness that extended over Europe. It was from the Magistri Comanci. Their respective names are unknown, their individual works are unspecialized, but the breath of their spirit might be felt all through those centuries. And their name collectively is Legion. We may safely say that all of the works of art between AD 800 and 1000, the greater and better part, are due to that brotherhood. Always faithful and often secret, the Magistri Comancini, the authority and judgment of learned men, justify the assertion. And among these learned men who agree this is the judgment of Kluger of Germany, Remy of France, and Servatico of Italy. Picture it, Sicily, 1922. Hey, you gotta give me a break, man. I've been quarantined with my wife, who loves the Golden Girls. As well, my favorite Golden Girls story, by the way, is when I lived in Germany. I was staying at a hotel for one reason or another. It's not important, but we were flipping through German television channels, and they were playing the Golden Girls, but it was dubbed in German. So it was like, oh, vice versa, Rose. And then Rose would reply, vice versa, Dorothy. But they got like the most butchest sounding chick to do to vice versa for Dorothy. It's really great. And you're like, come on, what year is this? Why are we talking about the Golden Girls? I'm sorry, I'm getting back on track. As well as Quatremal de Quincy in his Dictionary of Architecture, who in the article on the Coleman scene remarks that these men who were both the designers and the executors, architects, sculptures, and mosaicists, that's a great word, may be attributed the Renaissance of art and the propagation in the southern countries where it marched with Christianity. Certain it is that we owe it to them. The heritage of the antique ages was not entirely lost. And it is only by their tradition and imitation of the art of building was kept alive, producing works which we still admire, and which becomes surprising when we think of the utter ignorance of all science in those dark ages. The English writer, Hope, goes further and credits the Comancine order with being the cradle of the Association of Freemasons, who were, he adds, the first after Roman times to enrich the architecture with a complete and well-ordained system which dominates wherever the Latin Church extends its influence. So then even if the early records of old craft masonry in England are confused and often confusing, we are not left to grope our way from one dim tradition to another, having the history and monuments of this great order which spans the whole period and links the fraternity of Freemasons with those of the noblest chapters in the annals of art. This is some pretty highfalutin business here. Almost without exception, the old charges begin their account of masonry in England at the time of Athelstan, the grandson of Alfred the Great. That is between 925 and 940 of this prince or knight. They record that he was wise and pacific ruler, that he brought the land to rest and peace and built many great buildings of castles and abbeys, and he loved masons well. Hey there, Mason. Can I see your chisel? He is also said to have called an assembly of masons at which laws, rules, and charges were adopted for the regulation of the craft. Despite these specific details, the story of Athelstan and St. Alban is hardly more than a legend, albeit dating at no very remote epoch, as well within reasonable limits of tradition. Still, so many difficulties beset it that it has baffled the acutest critics, most of whom throw it aside. That is, however, too summary of a way of disposing of it, since the record, though badly blurred, is obviously trying to preserve a fact of importance in the order. It seems to me that this is the story of myth, though it may be. It is the story of the codification of the different guilds. This is the guy. He's like, the mason comes to build his castle, and he was like, I can't pay you for this castle. Can we work it off in some other way? is like the plumber in a porno movie. You know what I'm talking about? But, yeah, it seems to me, even though this might be a myth, this is an important myth because it's talking about the regulations and the codes of these different guilds. This is probably a story about solidifying power or making things consistent. You always want to have an organization that's consistent. This was the power and the genius of Ray Kroc, by the way. Ray Kroc gets a lot of shit, and you could call McDonald's the soulless husk of American capitalism, all that stuff. You can say it, and it's true, and I love McDonald's, but I also understand what you're talking about. But the idea that Ray Kroc had with McDonald's, so he swindled this whole thing and he turned it actually into a real estate business. McDonald's is actually a real estate business, or it was at one time, because they owned the property that the franchisees were putting up to sell these hamburgers. It's actually a brilliant story, but the brilliance that he had, and it might have been the McDonald brothers, the way that it works out is like kind of fuzzy through history and who do you believe, and people love to villainize Ray Kroc, but he says you have to have standards. It's got to be consistent. When you go to a McDonald's in, I don't know, Tucson, Arizona, it's got to be the same product as when you go to a McDonald's in, I don't know, fucking Cleveland, Ohio. It's got to be this. It's got to have the same. It's got to be the same thing. It was brilliant. It was a brilliant jump. It's like you can't just do whatever you want with wherever you want. One fucking place can't just offer like, hey, my wife is really good at making these cookies, so I'm going to make these available at my McDonald's franchise. Never going to happen. Won't happen. So in a way, this consistency, besides being a brilliant branding technique and business model, it actually enables you to become a little bit more agile in the marketplace. So, and I say agile like, well, you're like, well, how can all this consistency make you agile? And it's about, the point of it is it's about like a company response. It might be slower to adjust something, but when it happens, I mean, it fucking happens everywhere. I am the kind of dude, my dick gets hard when fucking McRib season comes around, and it's great. I love it. I go out and I order 2 McRibs. I eat them. I spend like fucking 2 hours in the bathroom, and then I don't want a fucking McRib for another year. You know what I'm saying? Back to it. I'm sorry about that. I apologize. Usually the assembly in question is located at York in the year 926, of which, however, no slightest record remains, whether at York or elsewhere. Some such assembly must have been convoked, either as a civil function or as a regular meeting of the Masons authorized by the legal power for upholding the honor of the craft. And its articles become the law of order. It was probably a civil assembly, a part of whose legislation was revised and approved code for the regulation of Masons, and not unnaturally, by some of its importance to the order, it became known as the Masonic Assembly. Moreover, the charge agreed upon was evidently no ordinary charge, for it was spoken of as the charge, called by one MS a deep charge of the observation of such articles as belong to Masonry, and another MS the rule to be kept forever. Other assemblies were held afterwards, either annually or semi-annually, until the time of Inigo Jones, who in 1607 became the superintendent general of royal buildings, and at the same time the head of the Masonic Order of England. And he it is who instituted quarterly gatherings instead of the old annual assemblies.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content
by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that, plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess, and I host the podcast Shoes, Booze, and Tattoos. I like to discuss a little bit of everything that's weird or unusual, from hauntings and folklore to true crime and history. I'm not only a podcaster, but I'm also a practicing witch, so I've made sure to dedicate a few episodes to the subject and dispel some of the common misconceptions about the craft. So if this sounds like your cup of tea, you can find Shoes, Booze, and Tattoos anywhere you get podcasts. And remember that booze is spelled B-O-O-S. I hope to see you all soon. Bye!
The Water of the Art operation. So using the Magus, the celestial intelligencer, and operations from the Greater Key of Solomon and the Bible, I'm going to be preparing a large bottle of water of the art. It's kind of like holy water, but it's way cooler. Check it out. This is what the Greater Key of Solomon says. And know that wheresoever thou shalt sprinkle this water, it will chase away all phantoms, and they shall be unable to hinder or annoy anyone. With this same water, thou shalt make all the preparations of the art. So I'm going to be collecting the ingredients needed for the operation on the days and hours specified in the book, and I'm going to perform the operation Wednesday, June 3rd at 11 p.m. And I'm also going to charge the water of the art under the full moon of June 6th. If you're interested in obtaining some of this water of the art, all you have to do is join the Patreon or subscribe star at the $10 tier. Being a supporter of the show on these platforms will also get you access to videos and bonus audio related to the operation. And I'm like, who wouldn't want some dope wizard water? Yeah, while the break is ending, I just want to throw in there to remember about the Pentecost sermon in quarantine, the psychological crisis of Solve and Coagula. I don't want to really get too far into what that's all about, but it's on Patreon, but it's a public post on Patreon and Subscribestar, so you don't have to support the show to get access to it. It's just it's like a very special episode. It's very much like the Easter sermon that I did as well. So please check it out, especially if you're skittish and nervous about these quarantine endings. It's basically what we're talking about. We're talking about the psychological, the mental health problems associated with quarantine and that kind of stuff. Also remember, it's Magician Sticker May. $5 and $10 supporters get an exclusive Magician sticker of the tarot card, the deck of tarot cards that I designed. We'll get a good look at that. I'll do a video or something of it when I get those in the mail. If they look good, if they look like crap, they're going to disappear. And we heard about the Water of the Art operation. Okay, so let's get back to this. Writers not familiar with the facts often speak of Freemasonry as an evolution from Guild Masonry, but that is error. They were never at any time united or the same. Although working almost side by side through several centuries, Freemasons existed in large numbers long before any city guild of Masons was formed, and even after the guilds became powerful and the two were entirely distinct guilds, as Hallam says, were fraternities by voluntary compact to relieve each other in poverty and to protect each other from injury. Two essential characteristics belong to them: the common banquet and the common purse. Okay, I see. They had also, in many instances, a religious and sometimes secret ceremonial to knit more firmly the bond of fidelity. They readily became connected with the exercises of the trade, with training of apprentices and the traditional rules of art. Guild masons, it may be added, had many privileges, one of which was they were allowed to frame their own laws and to enforce obedience thereto. Each guild had a monopoly of the buildings in its city or its town, except ecclesiastical buildings. But with this went serious restrictions and limitations. No member of a local guild could undertake outside work outside his town, but had to hold himself in readiness to repair the castles or the town walls. Whereas Freemasons journeyed the length and the breadth of the land wherever their labor called to them. Often the Freemasons, when at work in a town, were employed they employed guild masons, but only for rough work. And as such, they called them rough masons. No guild mason was admitted to the order of Freemasons unless he displayed an unusual aptitude, both as a workman and as a man of intellect, such as adhered only by the manual craft, and he cared nothing for intellectual aims, were permitted to go back to the guilds for the Freemasons. Be it once more noted that not only artists doing a more difficult and finished kind of work, but an intellectual order, having a great tradition of science and symbolism, which they guarded. Following the Norman conquest, which began in 1066, England was invaded by an army of ecclesiastics, and churches and monasteries and cathedrals and abbeys were commenced in every part of the country. Naturally, the Freemasons were much in demand, and some of them received rich reward for their skill as architects. Robertus Cameritus, a master mason employed at St. Albans in 1077, received a grant of land and a house in the town. In the reign of Henry II, no less than 157 religious buildings were founded in England. And at this period that we begin to see evidence of a new style of architecture, the Gothic. Most of the cathedrals of Europe dated from the 11th century, the piety of the world having been wrought to a pitch of intense excitement by the expected end of all things, accountability fixed by popular belief to take place in the year 1000, when the fatal year and the following one, which some held to be the real date for the sounding of the last trumpet, passed without the arrival of the dreaded catastrophe. The sense of general relief found expression in raising magnificent temples to the glory of God, who had mercifully abstained from delivering all things to destruction. And it was the order of Freemasons who made it possible for men to sing their souls in stone, leaving for the admiration of after times what Goethe called the frozen music of the Middle Ages, the monuments of the faith and the gratitude of the race, which adorn and consecrate the earth. So here we go. The Gothic thing is it's confusing. Now, I've had many years of art history, but I thought it'd be fun to go and look. I dug out my Catholic dictionary, which I stole from the Carnegie. Where did I steal this from? The Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh back in 1999. So, Gothic architecture, what does that mean? All the churches are black, man. They all have Tim Burton movies in their DVD collections. People are like, what's a DVD? Heavy eyeliner, black number one. Gothic architecture, according to the Catholic Dictionary, is originally used in the 17th century as a term of contempt for which is not classic. This is a departure from classic. The manner of building, a Franco-Norman in origin, used roughly from the end of the 12th to the end of the 16th century in France and England. And for not so long, and to a lesser degree in other parts of Western Europe. It is commonly divided into styles: early English, decorated, perpendicular, but these are arbitrary divisions, for by a series of imperceptible transitions in the manner of building, it was continually modified and altered at the will of the workman. That's interesting, right? The distinguishing characteristics of all this building to the lay observer is the pointed arc and the systems of stone vaulting thereby made possible. The Gothic was an ecclesiastical style. Contemporary barns, bridges, and houses were built of the same workmen by the same way, from the fact that it was entirely the creation of Christian men and owed nothing directly to pagan models. It's interesting. This is a sort of building has been represented by enthusiasts as the only one suitable for Catholic churches, at least in Western Europe. Even were this true, we would still be faced with the difficulty that Gothic as a system of building has been out of use for 300 years. And as a system of ornament is dependent upon the existence of intellectually responsible workmen, such as contemporary industrial organizations do not produce. Perfectly plain and unornamented Gothic building is possible where stone is readily available, but it is the ornamental accompaniments of medieval Gothic which makes it popular. There are not obtainable under modern conditions except in lifeless museum copies. And man, that's true. Like, I remember when I was in Paris, we went, the first stop that we went to was the Notre Dame Cathedral, right? Like the second to last stop was Jim Morrison's grave. We wound up at the Louvre. We were there for like a week or something, man. It was a crazy, blurry trip. Anyhow, the Notre Dame Cathedral is beautiful and it's intricate. But the one that I think about the most, I have this giant actual photo of it hanging up in my house, is the cathedral at Cologne. And this thing is beautiful. And this photo is like, it's old. It's like from the fucking like 1800s. But I think, or maybe early 1900s, something like that. But you can get like a loop or like a magnifying glass and look at like all this detail on this building. I have this gigantic photo of it. Maybe I'll take a couple shots of it tonight and throw it up on Instagram for when the show drops. But I mean, this thing is great. It's like, this is where the fucking like the three wise men are buried in this thing. It took like 600 years for them to construct it. Like literally, that's how long it took. To build this thing. It got hit by like 14 or 15 bombs in World War II and it stood. But anyhow, it's a phenomenal building, and the detail and the artistry that went into the decorations of it, like the Catholic dictionary is talking about, is just great. If you're not familiar with the building, just pull it up, or like I said, maybe I'll take some photos of the photo that I have hanging up on my wall in the living room, and maybe put it up on Instagram. So here, let me get back to this thing. Back to the book. A little need to be added to the story of Freemasonry during the cathedral building period. Its monuments are its best history Alike of its genius, its faith, and its symbols, as witnessed the triangle and the circle which forms the keystone of the ornamental tracery of every Gothic temple. Masonry was at its zenith of power. Its full splendor, the lion of the tribe of Judah, its symbol, strength and wisdom, its beauty and ideals, its motto to be faithful to God and the government, not so much, its mission to lend itself to the public good and the fraternal charity. Keeper of an ancient and high tradition. It was a refuge for the oppressed and a teacher of art and morality of mankind. In 1270, we find Pope Nicholas III confirming all rights previously granted to the Freemasons and bestowing on them further privileges. Indeed, all the popes up to Benedict the XII appear to have conceded marks of favor to the order, even to the length of exempting its members from the necessary observance of the statutes, from municipal regulations, and from obedience to royal edicts. No wonder, then, that Freemasons ere long took liberty for their motto, and by so doing aroused the animosity of those in authority, as well as the church they had so nobly served. Already forces were astir, which ultimately issued in the Reformation. And it is not surprising that a great secret order was suspected of harboring men and fostering influences sympathetic with the impending change felt to be near at hand, as men of the most diverse views, political and religious, were in the lodges. An order began first to be accused of refusing to obey the law and then to be persecuted. In England, a statute was enacted against the Freemasons in 1356 prohibiting their assemblies under the severe penalties, but the law seems never to have been rigidly enforced, although the order suffered greatly in the civil commotions of the period. However, with the return of peace after the long War of the Roses, Freemasonry revived for a time and regained much of its prestige, adding to its fame in the rebuilding of London after the fire, in particular of St. Paul's Cathedral. The cathedral building ceased, and the demand for highly skilled architects decreased. The order fell into decline, but never at any time lost its identity, its organization, and its ancient emblems. The Masons' Company of London, through its extant records, date only from 1620, which considered by its historians Condor to have been established in 1220, if not earlier, at which time there was great activity in building, owing to the building of the London Bridge, begun in 1176, and of Westminster Abbey in 1221, thus reaching back to the cathedral period. At one time, the Freemasons seem to have been stronger in Scotland than in England, or at all events to have left behind more records, for the minutes of the lodges of Edinburgh go back to 1599, and the Shaw statutes to an earlier date. Nevertheless, the art of architecture declined, Masonry declined with it. Not a few of its members identifying themselves with the guild of ordinary rough masons, whom they formerly held in contempt. They're going underground, or they're demoting themselves backwards, while others, losing sight of high aims, turned its lodges into social clubs. Here, this is it. Always, however, despite defection and decline, there were those, as we shall see, who were faithful to the ideas of the order and devoting themselves more and more to its moral and spiritual teachings until what has come to be known as the Revival. This is the date 1717. So that's Masonic History Part 2. I'm John, and this has been the Abercast. And hey, don't forget the Pentecost Sermon in Quarantine, the psychological crisis of Solve and Coagula. I'm really proud of it, and it doesn't cost you anything. You just have to go to Patreon or subscribe to Star to listen to it. It's also Magician Sticker May, and check out Advertise.com, the Water of the Art operation, to get more details on that. Thanks again for the new Patreon people, and yeah, great. Thank you. See you in a few days.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Hey, did you learn something? Did you laugh? Supporting me is a way for you to be a part of the Abercast and ensure its growth and sustainability. It also means I can create a normal schedule for shows and bonus shows, as well as the exclusive Fellowcraft episodes. By supporting the show, you are not only a listener, but you are a part of the show. You supporting the show gives me a way to offer fun rewards as a thank you for showing your appreciation and support for our projects. Do you have an idea for a reward that you don't see? Let me know. My supporters are my partners. I currently pay for you to listen to the Abercast. Not only do I pay the hosting bills out of my own pocket, I volunteer my time and talent to each and every episode of the Abercast. The price of books, the time and resources of reading and researching, the massive amounts of gin and tonic needed, the equipment it takes to record the shows, the time and resources it takes to create the bonus material, and the cost to maintain the internet presence. Is it worth your support? I don't know. I'm proud of the Abercast, and I feel like I'm improving all the time. In addition to creating the show that you dig and that you are excited about, I also have a full-time commitment and other obligations. So why financial support? All of the supporters help me focus my time on the quality and development of the podcast. And what if you can't afford, $1 or $3 or $10 or whatever a month? Believe me, I get that. There are many degrees of support, but if you can't support the show financially, please consider leaving a 5-star rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget that you can sign into the mailing list and still unlock a lot of bonus content. Thank you. I cannot put into words how much it means to me that you listen to the show each time I post a new episode. Your feedback, support, and love of the stories that we talk about here is what keeps me going.